Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see everybody and our weekly Wednesday night class on the Zera Shimshon. This week is Parashat Vayishlach. This evening's class has a triple sponsorship, so we want to thank our sponsors. We first would like to thank the Friedmans, Ron and Eileen, for sponsoring in memory of Eileen's mother, Yona Bat Mazal, who today we are observing this weekend, 11 years of her passing. Very, very special woman, so thank you to Ron and Eileen. I know this is very meaningful to Ron and Eileen. And may her neshama have an aliyah. May all the Torah that we learn go into her memory. And to raise her neshama. She was a very, very special woman. As Eileen said, no one would ever have a negative word to say about her. She was a peacemaker, a very great woman, someone that unfortunately I did not have the opportunity to meet. However, the greatest way to know somebody is to get to know their children. And I'm very fortunate to know both Ron and Eileen, and specifically Eileen in this case. And not only do I know your mother's daughter, I know your mother's granddaughter and great-granddaughter. So may that B'ezrat Hashem bring a lot of good merit to her.
She's saying hello. She's definitely saying hello and agreeing with you.
Okay, we have tonight's class is also sponsored in memory. For the memory of Yitzchak Leib ben Aaron, so may his neshama have an aliyah as well, and also in the memory of Mordechai ben Yehuda by Adam and Itai Tabari. Their father's 8th yahrzeit was today. So may all of the neshamas have an aliyah and a lot of merit to them, and to all of us who are here this evening, and all of us tuning in online, whether they're watching it now or watching it later. This week, Parashat Vayishlach is, as always, and I'm always going to say it, so you might get bored of it, is a very interesting parasha. But by the way, the parasha is, the Torah portion is as interesting as you let it become, as interesting as you make it. Just like anything in life, school can be very, very boring, or you could really make school very interesting and a real learning and educational experience. Vacation can be the same way, work can be the same way. Believe it or not, the parasha, the Torah portion, could be the very same way. And this is what we try to do here on a weekly basis. We try to bring the Torah portion alive. So this way, when we spend the Shabbat with our family, with our friends, with our community, we're going to be able to share some words of Torah and really understand what's going on, and understand and connect to the messages that God is giving us through our weekly study of the weekly Torah portion. So, being that it is a very interesting parasha, and a great parasha, action-packed I'd like to call it, because Yaakov is about to meet his brother who, to put it in a nice way, hates his brother's guts. Esav wants nothing but to spill his brother's blood. And this was like this for a long time, because it's been 34 years since they've seen each other. Nevertheless, Yaakov is still sought out by his brother, to the point where Yaakov is 97. You'd think by the time an individual is almost hitting 100 years old, they'd mature a little, they'd move on. No. Yaakov's brother, twin brother Esav, at 97 still is not coping with the fact that his brother not only took the firstborn or sold it to him, and then the birthright, and then he actually tricked his father into getting the blessing. So he was very, very hurt. Esav felt slighted. They're about to meet for the first time in 34 years, and the Torah tells us that Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our patriarch, is scared. Now, the thoughts of being afraid or scared or worrisome normally stem in a certain place. It stems from a root of insecurity. When someone is insecure in their certain situation, whether it's themselves or it's the surrounding around them, that's when a person becomes afraid. You become afraid, God forbid, when a person is, lo alenu, ambushed or has a health condition. You're afraid because you don't know what's going to be, and you are in an insecure position. Jacob, at this moment, was in an insecure position. He gets word that his brother is approaching him, with 400 armed men. Now Jacob is, if you would look at it, he's like a sitting duck. He's escaping from his father-in-law. He's moving back now to go home to see his parents. It's been a long time. And he's with his wives, his children, his flock, all his possessions. He's not ready for war. And this is what the Torah tells us, that Jacob was afraid. Rashi tells us why he was exactly afraid, because we have to remind ourselves, the beginning of last week's Torah portion, when Jacob leaves his home, remember that dream that we spoke about? The famous dream with the ladder and the angels going up and down? Our children have at least once in their lives all drawn it. Maybe we've even drawn it as growing up, okay? At that dream, Jacob is promised by God that he is going to be protected. God himself is making a promise. God himself is making a promise that he will protect Jacob in his travels, in his dealings, in him returning eventually back to his parents' house. So now imagine God came and gave you a dream, with the ladder, without a ladder, with angels, without angels, but he promises to you in that dream, and it's very clear to you in that dream, that he's going to protect you. Can you feel insecure anymore? Imagine he tells you, you are under my wings. And it's not like, okay, you're a Jewish person, and you fall under the blessings of the global Jewish nation, or all the beautiful things we like to read about or pray for. No, this is God directly giving you his guarantee that you are going to be protected. You wouldn't have that feeling of insecurity anymore. You wouldn't have that feeling of worry or being scared. Nevertheless, Jacob is scared. Rashi addresses this. Rashi tells us that Jacob felt that maybe he used up all his good merits and his blessings. And maybe that's why he now is scared. And furthermore, Jacob's also worried maybe he has sinned. Maybe sin has caused him to not have God's protection anymore. So either all his good merit was used, or he must have faulted, and those transgressions, those shortcomings now removed God's protection from him. The Zera Shimshon wants to say, at first it looks like he really is arguing on Rashi. I guess it's debatable if he is or isn't. Remember, the Zera Shimshon came a long while after Rashi. So for someone so many hundreds of years later to argue on previous commentaries, you have to have big shoulders. I guess it's debatable if the Zera Shimshon is arguing or not, but listen to what he says. He says, in truth, Jacob was not worried, or he had no reason to worry for the fact that he might have sinned. Why? It says follows. The Talmud tells us in Masechet Yoma, page 38b, tells us as follows, that once a person has reached half of their life, okay, without sin, so that already disqualifies us all, okay? But once a person, except for Ron, once a person has reached half their life without sin, they need not worry about the next half of their life for sinning. That means let's say a person's going to live 100 years. They make it to their 50th birthday and they have not made a real transgression, then the next 50 years, it's like easy sail. Sounds nice, right? We can only speak about these concepts of not sinning till half of your life when you're talking about a patriarch, you're talking about really, really great people that we aspire to be like. But this is what the Talmud tells us. We also learned, we said this a couple weeks ago, it's interesting, I don't want to give any ill thoughts in anyone's mind, but this is what our sages teach us, that a person's date of passing is normally within the range of 5 years plus or minus of their parents. Okay? Don't make any calculations, lo alenu, if anyone's parents passed away at an early age. But this is a rule that Talmud tells us, is a general rule that a person should be cautious. It's not like you should be worried and trembling, but whatever age if a person's mother passed away a lot later than a person's father, well, it's 5 years plus or minus within whatever the father's passing was and whatever a person's mother was passing 5 or plus years. Ask me why. It's not, I guess this is... No, it's both. It's both. So hopefully if, let's say one of the parents passed away earlier and you passed the 5 years before and after, so now wait till, I guess, the next parent who passed away later, just to be cautious, to be extra cautious. We always need to care about our lives. We always need to take care of our health and all of the above. But to be extra cautious within the 5 years range plus or minus of a person's parents passing away. Okay? Having said that, look what the Zera Shimshon does. How old is Isaac, Jacob's father, when he passes away? Does anyone know? He, by the way, lived the longest of all of our three patriarchs. 180 years old. Okay, he's the easiest to remember. It's a very round number. Anyone know when Abraham passed away? 175. Okay, hardest one. When did Jacob pass away?
170.
You were very close. 147. Okay, you said 148?
Went over it, disqualified.
Okay, we have a strict judge over here. 180 years old, Isaac passes away. What does that mean to Jacob? That means when does Jacob need to gauge his 5 years plus or minus? 175 till 185. Okay, this is a very hard question. I'll be very, very surprised if someone knows the answer to this. How old, Ron, I expect, how old was Rebecca, Jacob's mother, when she passed away? Okay, we're going to do this.
37 years.
We're going to have the whole box of jelly beans, the whole jar. You could get to take that if you get this answer right. Okay, so listen to this. You're very close again. Very close again, but not. He said 125, no jelly beans. Okay, so the Torah does not tell us. That's the truth. Oh, very good. So very good. So the Torah does not tell us how old Rivka was when she passed away. The Torah, by the way, doesn't even tell us that Rivka even passes away. All it tells us in this week's Torah portion is that her nurse, because how old was she when she was taken from her parents' house? A total of 3. So a 3-year-old comes with a nurse. I guess you come and you acquire a wife when she's 3 years old, and she comes with a nurse. Perfect, right? Okay, we spoke about that a couple weeks ago. So this week, the Torah tells us that her nurse passes away. So Rashi's tackling with, what's the point of this? Why right now? In his second interpretation, he says, well, it must mean that not only did she pass away, but however the one that she was taking care of also passed away, and that was Rivka, which would mean that Jacob never saw his mom again after she sent him away. Pretty sad, right? But the timing of the way it says it in the Torah leads us to understand that she passed away right before Jacob comes home, because Jacob was on his way home. So if Jacob was 97 when he left, but he waited 2 years before he gets home. We read that this week. That's when a bunch of trouble came up to him. Okay? He gets home at 99. So we have to assume that Jacob was 99 when his mother passed away, because she passed away literally right before he gets home. What was the age difference between Jacob and his mother? 23 years. So that would make Rivka 122. 99 and 23. So David, you're both of them very close. Okay? Why are we saying this? Because, again, a person's life expectancy, a person should, so to say, gauge 5 years above, 5 years minus. Now, what does this have to do with the first statement we brought in the Talmud of a person gets to half of their life without sin, their next half is kind of sin-free. They have to worry not of any sin. Jacob, his life expectancy could only be up till 185, right? That's the maximum. So to say, whether you want to take it at 180 like his father was, or at 185 if you want to give him an extra 5. By the time Jacob is 97 years old, he now already is past the halfway mark. Are we following? The Zera Shimshon says, Jacob should not be worrying that he has sinned or that he will sin, because he already went half his life without sinning. There's no reason for him to continue to believe or to be worried about the sin. So the Zera Shimshon now, it's a little bit of a...
No, but how does he know it's half past his half-life?
Oh, because his father's going to live till 180. He's already 97. He passed the half mark. He's already past 90. Okay? Based on... everything was oral. They had better than the Talmud. They had prophecy. Okay? It's a good question. Why did he wait so long to go back to see his mother? Okay, even though it's a little off topic, it's on topic, but I'll answer and then we'll continue. So, Yaakov originally was told to leave his house for 7 years. The Torah doesn't say it black on white. However, the Torah does tell us that he should go for yamim achadim, a short amount of time. Short amount of time was considered to be 7 years. I guess that number makes sense because that's exactly what Lavan asked for Jacob to work for one of his wives. However, he tricked him. So he got tricked into the first 7. He was forced to do the second 7. At that time, he now has 12 children. Well, a little before that. He's going to have 12 by the end of his 6 years. He already had a bunch of children. How's he going to come home with such a burden, penniless? He didn't want to come and fall as a burden onto his parents. So you know what he said? I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to work myself to have some type of estate, enough of wealth. So he worked 6 years for himself, and during those 6 years, he prospered and God blessed him tremendously. Then he comes home, and he unfortunately procrastinated for 2 years, and those 2 years is what unfortunately brought him nothing but trouble with his very own son, Yosef. Okay? 22 years, right? He was 20 years in Lavan's house. He was 2 years. We're using it at a very high level. We're saying it, but judging him at a high level, he procrastinated for 2 years, and that's why Yosef was taken away from Jacob for 22 years. Okay? That's why he didn't come back so fast. I'm not saying he was right or wrong, but that's how it led to happen. 7, and then another 7, and then he was too much of a family, and then he needed 6 to start acquiring for himself.
And he never called him.
No communication.
Maybe he thought that he sinned because he didn't even know phone calls to the parents, no visits, no nothing. So why am I so afraid? You know, why is he afraid? Well, maybe that's why he was afraid. Maybe he sinned. And if he sinned, why did he sin? Because maybe that's the reason. I don't know if anybody ever said that.
Okay, so there are multiple answers on why Yaakov was afraid. If you got on the WhatsApp chat, or if you're looking on YouTube or on Facebook, the class that we gave on Monday night, I gave 3 different answers on this, and now we're giving a completely different one. Okay, so we gave 3 answers from other Torah scholars and commentaries, Mefarshim, but tonight we're studying specifically the Zera Shimshon. That is one approach. Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about over here. That Yaakov Avinu now, he passed his half-time mark. The Zera Shimshon explains. Without sin, he need not be afraid of sinning in the future. And therefore, he says, that's not why Jacob is scared. It must be something else that is causing him this insecurity to be afraid. This is a very powerful lesson, what he's about to say, and we're going to make it very, very practical to each and every one of our lives. He says as follows. You know why Jacob was afraid? Jacob was afraid because he was bestowed a tremendous amount of blessing. God gave him a tremendous amount of wealth, something that was not promised to him. Right? All Jacob was promised to by God was that he would be safe. Being safe doesn't mean to have all the comfort, all the animals, all the children that he has. All of these were, in Jacob's eyes, extra blessings, things that he didn't know if he really deserved or not, but I guess he must deserve it because God gave it to him, and that is what got Jacob worried. Maybe I really used up all my reward, all my merit, because I'm getting a lot more than I bargained for. Okay, hold that thought. The Zera Shimshon now continues. He says the Talmud says there are three things that is based on a person's mazal, based on a person's, how do we say, fortune, luck, bad luck, good fortune. These are the three things. I'll say them in Hebrew, and then we'll translate them. B'nei, chayei, umizonei. B'nei means children. A person can, according to the Talmud, according to this Talmud, not everyone agrees with this, but the Talmud says that a person cannot choose or decide on when they will have kids and how many kids they will have. That is all predestined. That is a person's luck, based on who their parents are, based on when they were born, based on where they grew up, all of these different spiritual and physical things that make up of a person's mazal. The next is chayei, life. A person's longevity, according to this opinion, is all based on mazal. A person could have horrible luck and la alenu pass away at a very young age, or have great luck, no matter if they're a good or bad person, and live very old. And the third is mizoneh, food, livelihood. A person's livelihood, a person's wealth, is, according to this opinion, based on fortune. According to this, Zera Shimshon says, now Yaakov has absolutely no reason to be worried that his very own lifespan at this moment maybe didn't even reach a half. If a person's life and good fortune is all based on luck, right? Then how does Jacob now know he's only going to live up till 120, up till 180, and now he's at 90 years old? He would never know that, because maybe he has a different fortune than his father. And therefore, the Zera Shimshon says, whichever way you look at it, it is the blessing of wealth that God gave Jacob, which caused him this insecurity and this fear. If you say, I'm going to read it as follows. If you say he received the good fortune, the blessing that God gave him from merit, so now he's low on merits and now he's scared. But if you say he received God's good fortune because that was his mazal, now he's now in doubt, how long is his mazal going to allow him to live? So either way, what the Zera Shimshon is proving is that Jacob was scared because of the good fortune that God gave him, all of the wealth and blessing and children and gifts that he has. On this, I wanted to maybe provoke our thoughts for a moment of making sure a person doesn't feel, making sure we don't feel extremely secure when things are going good. Because it is human nature and human tendency that when everything is doing great, there's a livelihood coming in and everyone's healthy and everyone's happy and everyone's doing great in school and everyone's doing, that we become complacent, we become comfortable, and we, as the Torah says in Deuteronomy, we sit back, we kick up, our hearts rise, we get a little arrogant, and we're very comfortable. That is exactly when the opposite is supposed to happen. When we feel like everything is going good, that's when we got to be worried. And by the way, this is a great coping mechanism at the same time, because most people always have something going on in life. The main spheres of life, whether it's health, whether it's family, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's financial, whether it's children, parents, there's always one aspect in life which is not at 100%, right? Do we have any angels in the room that everything's going good? Well, by the way, that's when we're supposed to be worried. We're supposed to be worried if everything is going good. Jacob at this moment was like, wow, everything's really going so well. Thank God I have 2 wives with their maidservants. I have 12 children at this point. I've got hundreds and thousands of animals. He was a tremendously wealthy man at this point. That's why he was afraid, the Zera Shimshon says. It's a different interpretation. He wasn't really afraid of his brother. His brother just preempted him to now pause and remind himself and now start rethinking his life and where his life has taken him at the age of 97. But what we need to remind ourselves is when things are comfortable, when things are good, that's when we also have to worry. Not only worry when there's something that we need to tend to, we need to worry when everything is going good, because the world is a circle, and what's up goes down, and what's down goes up. This is the reason why the world is circular, because nothing in this world is secure. And therefore, the Zera Shimshon is teaching us through Yaakov Avinu, through Jacob, our patriarch, that whenever anything is too comfortable, too easy, that's when we need to start worrying. In business, if everything goes way too smooth right from the beginning, it could either be that 1 in a billion, which, okay, that's very, very rare, or it could be too good to be true, and then it's not going to be sustainable. Therefore, whenever in life we do have those bumps, we have those setbacks, we have to remind ourselves that that is part of the normal course of growth. And when it goes too quick, we need to start worrying. When everything's too perfect, too picture perfect, that's when we need to start worrying. Sometimes parents, especially young parents with young children, get very worried when their children do things that are not cookie cutter perfect. Wrong. Remind yourself that they are children, they are human beings, they're imperfect, you're imperfect, everyone's imperfect, and this is part of parenting. It's part of raising children. Children which take things that are not theirs, children which say things which are not truthful, children who can't concentrate in class. I mean, is it so much of a crime when they space out? No. We just want everyone to be cookie cutter, but that's not how every child is, or any child for that matter. And therefore, we should know that that is normal. If everything's perfect with one's child, that's when you start asking questions, because it could only look perfect, because it's not perfect. There's nothing in this world that can ever be perfect. Jacob teaches us that he started worrying when everything was going too easy. So may we always have it easy in our lives. We don't look for trouble or look for hardships. However, we need to take a step back and look and realize how easy is it really, and if we can ameliorate ourselves, make ourselves better in any way. The other thing I want to talk about, this is one of the great questions. This is a philosophical question. It's a what if question. You know, the what if questions are never true. But what is a greater test? Is the test of poverty a greater test than the test of wealth, or is the test of wealth a harder test than the test of poverty? And this is a classic question that there's really no answer to. Besides, for our sages do tell us that the test of wealth is a harder test than poverty, but for us to understand that, it cannot be at any extreme, right? A person who has billions of dollars compared to a person who doesn't even have a penny and is sleeping on a park bench and is always hungry, well, yeah, I guess we'd all prefer the first test than the second one. But within a normal realm of affluence and poverty, the basic test of wealth is a harder test, our sages tell us, than the test of poverty. And I'll tell you why very briefly. When a person is affluent and everything is comfortable for them, as we said, it's not so easy for them to get turned on and to connect to their Creator and to realize who or where it came from. Sometimes a person feels when they're at those levels that it's my brains, it's my wisdom, it's my hard work, it's my extra hours I put in. And yes, all of that does play a part in the effort that they put into it. But unless a person is blessed by God, and unless God wants it to be that way, it doesn't happen that way. The test of poverty, on the other hand, a person who's broken, they always, more often than not, I'll put it, always turn back to their Creator. They turn back to God. At least they're connected. And this is something that we need to remind ourselves, that sometimes when a person who is unfortunate does approach you, remember that they do have a certain edge on you in one way, that they on a daily, maybe even on an hourly basis, are always connected to God. And just for that, it's worth for us to help them, to respect them, and to be there for them in whatever capacity is normal. It doesn't mean drop everything, but it means maybe doing a little more than we would have if we would not have spoken about this.
Good question. Even with Jacob, when you say Ani Chashuv Kemet, if somebody takes up that philosophy, the test is out the door.
Okay, I hear. But just like when they say when a person embarrasses someone, it's as if they killed them. They're not really dead. It's as if. So too, when a person is poor, it's as if they're dead. They're not really dead, meaning they feel deflated, they feel dead, and that adds towards their motivation to turn back to Hashem. Okay? The Zera Shimshon now quotes a verse in the Nevi'im, in Yeshayahu. I'll read the verse in Hebrew, I'll read it in English, and he quotes a midrash on it. And now through this midrash, we're going to extrapolate 3 different points based on the midrash, and each of them have a lesson in them of themselves that we can make a whole class on, but we're going to just do briefly each one. Very, very interesting. The verse is in Yeshayahu, chapter 44, verse 5. And I'll quote the verse. The verse says as follows: Ze yomar lashem ani. This one will say, I am for God. V'ze yikra b'shem Yaakov. And this one will go by the name or call himself Jacob. V'ze yichtov yado lashem. And this one will write to God. And finally, uveshem Yisrael yichaneh. And they will be nicknamed Yisrael. So the Midrash says it's talking about 4 different people. This verse is talking about 4 completely different people. It's a very cryptic verse. If you would follow along, it's not a very easy verse to understand. Rashi and other commentaries on the Nevi'im do give their interpretations. Listen to the way the Midrash says it. The Midrash says that the first group of people of Ze Yomar Lashem Ani, who's a person who says, I'm for God? It's one who's calling out to God and really requesting, praying to God, please help me not to fault. Please help me not to make a mistake. This is one who says, I am for God, meaning God, take me and guide me. Then the Midrash says, the second person, of V'ze yikra b'shem Yaakov, and this one is called in the name of Jacob. This refers to righteous converts. In the name of God, refers to, in the name of Jacob, refers to righteous converts. We're going to ask on that. Next, V'ze yichtov yado lashem, and the one who writes to God, you know who the one who writes to God is? A Ba'al Teshuva, a person who came closer to God. They maybe were born far away, and then they started learning and coming close, or they were close, they veered off, and then they came back. A Ba'al Teshuva, a person who's completed repentance, they've tried to self-perfect themselves. This is a person who writes to God, which we're going to speak about also. And the fourth person is Ubeshem Yisrael Yikaneh, and the person is going to be called Israel. That's talking about a God-fearing person. So again, the 4 type of people we're speaking about. The first is a person who is asking Hashem to help them not to sin. The second is talking about a righteous convert. The third is talking about a Ba'al Teshuva, a person who's come back to God. And the fourth is talking about a God-fearing person. The Zera Shimshon asks, Can
you be all 4?
Can I? Yes, a person can have multiple, if you want to call it, personalities or identities in different areas and realms of their life. That's a good question. Very good question. Okay. The Zera Shimshon asks on this verse, on each of these interpretations, of very, very noteworthy questions. First, as he says, why are righteous converts, or converts in general, associated to Jacob more than any of the other patriarchs? That's a good question. Who would you think that a convert should be associated with most? Jacob, Isaac, or Abraham? Abraham. Why? That was his role in life. His role in life was converting. When I say converting them to believe in one God, converting anyone that was able to feed and give shelter to believe in one God. But no, the verse is telling us, based on this interpretation, that converts are associated with Jacob. That's the first question. Second question he asked is, what does a person's handwriting have anything to do with a Ba'al Teshuva? On one hand, who needs to write to God? On the other hand, well then if someone does, I guess everyone should. Okay? The third question he asks is, why are God-fearing people called Israel? We're going to answer the questions in complete reverse, and they all have to do with this week's Torah portion. We're going to start with the last question. The last question of why are God-fearing people referred to as Israel, opposed to, a Jew or son of Abraham. Why specifically Israel? This week's Torah portion we read about the fight between Yaakov Avinu and the angel of Esav. Okay? We know that the angel of Esav tried to trap Jacob when he was alone. They had a fight. The angel couldn't beat him. He gave him a low blow to punch him to strike him in his thigh, which damaged his sciatic nerve, and that's why we don't eat from a sciatic nerve, even of kosher animals. But something very interesting came out of that whole ordeal. And I'm going to read you a couple verses, just very few, just so that we get into the real mode of what's going on. I'm going to find it for us. It's chapter 32. Chapter 32, verses 27 till 30. Boom, boom. Okay, look at this. So, Vayomer shalecheni ki ala shachar. So the angel is now being pinned down by Jacob. Jacob is winning, okay? And now the angel says, dawn is coming, I gotta go. Let me free. Okay, I surrender, I give up. Vayomer loy ashalechacha kim b'rachtani. He says, I'm not going to send you unless you bless me. Jacob's saying, bless me and I let you go. A blessing from even an evil angel, I guess, is still a blessing. Vayomer elav ma shemecha. So you know what the angel answers back to Jacob? He says, what's your name? Jacob says, Vayomer Yaakov. He says, my name's Yaakov. So he says as follows. Vayomer, the angel says, Lo Yaakov ye'amer od shimcha. Your name's not going to be Jacob anymore. Ki'im Israel. Your name is now going to be Israel. Why? Ki sarita im Elokim v'im anashim v'tuchal. Because you vanquished, you beat not only human beings, but celestial beings at the same time. So Jacob is asking for a blessing. It seems like he doesn't get a blessing. He rather gets a name change. Hold that thought for a moment. Who else in our Torah had their name changed? No, but their main name was changed. Who is it? Okay, so I heard Abraham was Avram, became Avraham. Sarai was Sarah. Okay, who else? There's one word that comes to the top of my mind. No. Yehoshua. Right? Yehoshua was Hosea. He was changed to Yehoshua. Okay? And another one is Jacob. But there's a difference. The Talmud tells us that all of the others, you're not allowed to call them their old name. However, Jacob, even now, we are now only in chapter 32 in the book of Genesis. We have multiple more times that the Torah is going to speak to us about Jacob, yet it goes back and forth. Sometimes it's Israel, sometimes it's Jacob. How come is Jacob's name changed but still used? So it was changed in a different nature than the other ones. And that's what we have to remind ourselves, is that Jacob went through a period in his life where up until he left his home, up until he was 63, it was like unknown. The four patriarchs are supposed to be Abraham and Isaac and Esav and Jacob. Esav messed up so much, and Jacob now took his place. Jacob now had to fit the position of both the spiritual and the physical world and realms at the same time. So what this angel does now is gives Jacob another name so that he can properly fit those two identities. Now guess what? Jacob refers to the physical realms of his nature, and Israel refers to the spiritual ones. Now based on that, the Zera Shimshon says it makes perfect sense why God-fearing individuals are referred to as Israel, because you know where they put their greatest emphasis on? On spiritual matters over physical matters. So that's to answer that last person. Now we'll go to the previous one. V'zeh yichtov yado l'Hashem. And a Ba'al Teshuva is going to be one who writes to God. What does that mean? A person who coming close writes to God. Something fascinating the Zera Shimshon brings in the name of the Mikubalim. Sometimes the Zera Shimshon says, in the name of the Mikubalim, in the name of the mystic teachers. Okay, he doesn't really give a source. I guess it's pretty mysterious. Okay, he says as follows. He says, ever since the destruction of the temple, there is a certain tikkun, as we say in Hebrew. There's a certain thing that needs to be fixed and repaired that is only done in a certain way. Meaning, when the temple was up, this was not missing. Ever since the temple was destroyed, this itself is missing. And he says the only way this spiritual issue is rectified is when people, each and every one of us, writes our own Torah novelties. Now, just to hold for a moment, each and every person has their own chelek, their own portion in Torah. Each and every Jew is represented as a letter in the Torah. We don't know which letter we represent, but each and every one of us represent a letter. Hence the law that a Torah which is even missing one letter is disqualified from being used. Each and every Jew has their portion in Torah. What does that mean when they have a portion in Torah? That means that there is a certain question or a certain answer in a certain understanding in God, in the Torah, in nature, in Jewish history as a people, that you yourself, each and every one of us, has the gift and even the responsibility to bring out to the Jewish world. The Zera Shimshon says the way to really bring that out is by writing it. And then he quotes, what does he say? He quotes a sefer called the Ma'avarya book, which is also a Kabbalistic book, which says a Ba'al Teshuva needs to focus on writing their own Chidushe Torah, their own Torah novelties. Just to take a moment on this, is every Ba'al Teshuva has a story, and every Ba'al Teshuva has seen the world in another way that when they come back to look at the Torah, they have their own perspective on it. And you know what God wants? God wants you to share that. God wants you to share it so much that it's not only going to be shared verbally, He wants it to be written. He wants it to be transmitted and passed on to even more and more people. This is an obligation that each and every one of us has. Because nowadays, each and every one of us is a Ba'al Teshuva in one way or another. Whether we grew up in traditional homes, in very religious homes, in very unreligious homes, in affiliated or unaffiliated homes, each and every one of us took our own paths, and we find ourselves now, hopefully now, coming back towards learning Torah, coming back towards getting connected to God and understanding God and praying to God, getting to know Him better. We have an obligation to share what we've seen elsewhere and to show how this is the best. And this is what makes most sense. So this is why the Zera Shimshon says that this one comes with their handwriting is referring to a Ba'al Teshuva specifically. Very nice. Now the third, and this was the individual that was called in the name of Jacob, which refers to converts, righteous converts. Why are they associated to Jacob over the other patriarchs? Furthermore, the Zera Shimshon says that the Talmud tells us that a convert, when they pray their Amidah, is still supposed to say, Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu, God, my God, and the God of our fathers, Elokei Avraham, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. 1 second. But the convert did not have Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob as their forefather. How could they be calling them their fathers? Answers the Talmud, is just as Abraham went out and he brought close and he converted all who wanted to come close, until today Abraham is always referred to as Av Hagerim, the father of all converts. The Zera Shimshon brings us to strengthen why are not converts associated to Abraham more than they are to Jacob? We're calling them in the name of Jacob. Why? Listen, he gives two answers. The first answer he gives is he reminds us that we have a clear obligation not to oppress and not to mistreat any convert. It's something that is very clear in the Torah. The Torah repeats it multiple times. But the Torah also gives us a reason why we have to treat the convert properly. I'll read you the verse. The verse is in Exodus chapter 22, verse 20. It says as follows, Veger lo toneh, and a convert you shall not mistreat, velo tilhatzenu, and you should not oppress them. Why? Ki gerim heyitem be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you were foreigners. You were outsiders when you were in Egypt. How did you feel then when they oppressed you, when they mistreated you? Any good? No, you didn't. Don't do to others what you don't or you didn't like when it was done to you. The Zera Shimshon says, how did the Jewish people get to Egypt? How did the family of Jacob get to Egypt? Well, Yosef was sold. This is next week's Torah portion. Yosef was kidnapped and sold. And then Yosef invites his father to come down with the family during the famine. The Zera Shimshon says that it was because of Jacob that the Jewish people eventually ended up in Egypt. That can mean a lot of things, right? Because you might say, no, that was Joseph, because Joseph invited them. No. How did Joseph get there? Unfortunately, Joseph got there because of the favoritism Jacob was showing to his son Joseph, which preempted them to want to kidnap him and sell him. Or you could look at it as Jacob made the initial or the final decision to pick up his whole family from Israel, or Eretz Canaan, and bring them to Egypt. The Zera Shimshon says, do you know why, as Jews, we need to respect our converts, our righteous converts? Is because of Jacob. Because if it wasn't for Jacob, who made us as refugees, caused us to become refugees in Egypt, we would never have this reason or even this commandment to honor and to not oppress and to not mistreat our converts. For that reason, since he was the start of the reason why we went to Egypt, that is why we owe it to treat our converts properly, and very, very properly. Second answer, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Second answer, the Zera Shimshon is completely different direction. He takes us back to Adam Harishon. Adam, as we all know, unfortunately faulted by eating from the tree of knowledge. I always like to do this. Whose fault was it? Adam. The woman's. Okay, very good. I set you up.
Listen to your wife, sir.
That's right.
Okay. What happened was Adam was a very tall human being before he ate from the tree of knowledge. And he was also more of a spiritual being than he was after he ate from the tree of knowledge. He had at that moment, when he was created and until he sinned, he had every single Jewish soul in his body. And depending on where a person's soul was, where each and every one of our souls were in Adam's body, physically and spiritually, when he ate from the tree of knowledge, it is what, as the Arizal explains, is what depends on what our own tendencies are. Certain people have issues with their hands. issues controlling their eyes, issues controlling their mouth, issues controlling their feet. It depends on where you were in Adam's body at that exact time. And the most righteous, as the Arizal explains, few and far between, were able to escape Adam's body right before Adam even ate from the tree of knowledge. Okay? Very, very, very deep concept. However, what happened after Adam ate from the tree of knowledge is the sparks of light in those souls that he had were scattered all over the world. And this is, by the way, one of the reasons why, as Jews, we go to all places of the world, whether it's by choice or against our will, because what we're doing is we are actually, by the mitzvot, by the good deeds that we complete in each and every one of these places, we're going and we are collecting these sparks of light that were scattered originally when Adam sinned. But the souls were also scattered. And that's why some or most Jewish souls do come back to Jewish parents. But there are some Jewish souls which are born to Gentile parents. And those are the souls who have a natural magnet drawing them back to wanting them to convert. If you've ever spoken to a truly righteous convert, it's very hard for them to explain in words what they feel, the reason why they are committed. But once you start digging and understanding, it's like they say these words, I feel like my soul is just being drawn to God, drawn to the Torah, drawn to Judaism, and it's unexplainable. And what that is, in a true scenario, not if someone's putting on a show for it, but in a real, true scenario, is literally the fact that their soul was scattered so far that it didn't come back in the normal course that it should. Rather, it was seeking its source in a different way. Comes Zera Shimshon and explains, based on the Ramami Pano. We've spoken about this rabbi before, Italian rabbi who lived 100 years before the Zera Shimshon. He says the Ramami Pano teaches us that it was the snake who fooled Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge, and until Jacob came around and fooled his father and fooled his brother to get the blessing, until then there were no scattered souls which were converting to Judaism. It was only from this point and on that they were able to. Why, he explains, is because since he fooled his father and his brother to get the blessing, along with those blessings came the blessings to allow those scattered souls to come back at the same time. And that's why the Zera Shimshon says converts are most associated with Jacob out of the three of our patriarchs. So I want to say something on that, and I want to say on the previous also. On the concept of a convert coming into Judaism, coming into the faith for the right reasons. We have to always remember to respect them for that decision that they made. We have to respect them for going through that spiritual soul searching and struggle and just being completely devoted to coming back to their source. It's something that, God forbid, we're never allowed to berate, mock, make fun of. We always have to remember this rule, this law that Torah tells us of making sure never to mistreat or oppress a convert. It is something that God takes very serious. A convert is one of the close people to Hashem that when they turn to Hashem, their prayers are answered in a stronger way. Why? They are just like orphans. They are just like widows. They are just like poor people. They don't have anyone else to turn to. So who do they turn to? They turn to God. Remember, it's those four people: orphans, widows, poor people, and converts, because they don't have an Abba to turn to. A convert, when they convert, their parents are no longer their parents anymore. They need to respect them, obviously, as common gratitude that they brought them physically into this world, but they don't have someone to lean on. They don't have someone to turn to. So you know who they, by default, turn to? To God. The same as with an orphan. They don't have an Abba to turn to, so they turn to God. A widow doesn't have a husband to turn to. Who does she turn to? To God. A poor person, after all said and done, they don't really have anyone to turn to except for God. So too is the convert. And that's why the Torah warns us to treat those 4 people very, very special. Very, very careful. It's really, really meaningful. There was once a boy that my son was playing with that unfortunately lost his father. I'm not even sure if he ever met his father. And I felt like my son was at the age that I could tell him that, and tell him that, yet give him the opportunity to treat this boy maybe a little more special, maybe be a little more caring. Not to make him feel like he's different or like he's special, because nowadays special is that's a special child. That could mean a lot of different things, right? However, making sure to tell my son why this child is different, yet not treat him different, if anything, only better, without letting him know. And I explained it to my son, and till this day, anytime he sees this boy, in the back of his mind, I can guarantee you, because sometimes him and I have this conversation, he knows that this boy does not have an Abba, and he always treats this kid better than others. It's something which is really meaningful. You might think, my son is 8 years old, and I told him this maybe a year or 2 ago. You think that they don't understand. They'll understand if you sit down with them and you really have an educational, a heartfelt conversation with your children, with your grandchildren, and you explain them why. You explain them you explain them what. You tell them you don't really know why. That's part of God's calculation. However, there's something you can do about it, because this child doesn't have anyone to turn to, so don't give him a reason to want to seek that extra security or help because you might give him a hard time or someone might be giving him a hard time. And it could be very, very sensitive on whatever the person needs. It could be something to eat or drink. It could be when it comes to sports. It could be just letting them pass in line. These are basic things which all are part of the makeup of an orphan, and something that we need to be very, very careful about. We need to do the same with converts, same with widows. These stories are just coming to my mind as I'm saying them. There's unfortunately a woman who lost her husband, I think it was 2 years ago, not from here. I don't want to say which country or city she's from, but not from here. And her husband left her behind with 4 boys. And each of these boys were having their own difficulties. Now, very often after a tragedy, people are there right away. They're all at the Shiva house, they're all at the hospital, they're all there for the Shloshim, for the 30 days, they're there for the yahrzeit. But a year, 2, 3, 4 pass by, people forget. Unfortunately, there are other tragedies that come up. And people forget about the people who have unfortunate situations. They're still in an unfortunate situation. It didn't get any better. They still don't have an Abba. She still doesn't have a husband. So I told my parents, I said, for some reason I'm thinking about this person who deceased, who passed away and I was close with. And maybe for Hanukkah I would suggest to go bring them each a gift. To bring each of those 4 children a gift. Bring the wife a gift. You have no idea what that would do for them. And right away my parents both loved the idea, and B'ezrat Hashem they're going to do that for Hanukkah. Because even if they exchange their own gifts, but for them to know, for orphans to know, for a widow to know that other people care about them still. They cared about them during the tragedy, pre and post, but even so much time after. I'm giving you a Hanukkah challenge for this year. Okay, you ready? Write it down if you haven't, take out your notes. Hanukkah challenge this year is reach out to somebody as little as a jelly donut, or a gift card, or something small, something special. Give something to someone who you think really needs it. I'm not saying they need to be a widow, or they need to be an orphan, or they need to be poor, or they need to be a convert. But anyone who you feel really needs it, God bless us. Our kids, do they really need 8 prizes? Do they even need 1 prize? They're getting stuff all the time. Maybe put a little focus on maybe someone else's child that needs something. maybe someone else that could use a little something. And it's not just the monetary value, it's the thought. Go out and give that extra thought to others, because Hashem reciprocates it. And a person never knows where they'll end up in life, or where their children will end up in life. If you care for others and you do for others, others will do for you. This is something very, very powerful we learned from this week's Zera Shimshon. So just to sum up those three different personalities. The first personality we spoke about was the God-fearing person. The God-fearing person is referred to as Israel because they're focusing on more spiritual things opposed to Yaakov, which is more on the physical side. And then we said a Ba'al Teshuva needs to write their story. You need to write it, you need to put it, whether it's in paper, type it up, leave it for someone. Leave it for your family members, email it to somebody. Write your story of what you've seen and what you now see. Your questions, your answers on understanding God and understanding the Torah. And the third person we spoke about was the convert which is most associated with Jacob. Jacob is referred to as Abir Yaakov. He is the grandfather of all of us, right? Because Abraham is not our specific grandfather. He is also the grandfather of the Ishmaelim. And Yitzhak is also, he's our grandfather, but he's not specific to us. He's also the grandfather, the patriarch of Esav. But Jacob is our very own and specific grandfather. And you want to know the truth? Is also to those who are righteous converts and come into our faith fully committed. May we be blessed in the merit of learning the Zera Shimshon this evening, that there will be no hardship, no sorrow, no pain. But until Mashiach comes, and there might be some of that, let us open our eyes and lend ourselves, help others, think of others, care of others. Please, I'm going to ask you about this Hanukkah challenge after Hanukkah. Who was able to fulfill and pass this Hanukkah challenge? So may this class be in merit of and in memory of Yona bat Mazal, Mordechai ben Yehuda, and Yitzchak Leib ben Aharon. We're going to have Ron do Kaddish for us. If there's anyone else needs to? No. So just Ron is going to do Kaddish in their memory. Rabbi Chananya ben Akshay Omer, Shekel Shbach Mazakot Yisrael Fichach B'Shalom Yizot Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Leman Tzidko Yagdil Torah Ve'Yadir.